The federal budget sequester significantly cut defense spending. Are you budgeting for the sequester to continue?
Unfortunately, we are. And I think, again, we went into this year, that is 2013, thinking that unlikely the sequester would actually happen. We had told our investors going into the year, we're not going to plan for it, but if it is, it'll cost us about 10 cents a share. Well, it really did happen. And in fact, our Sikorsky helicopter business, the maker of Black Hawk helicopters, they saw their spare parts revenue to the military down by 50% this year. Huge numbers. And so as we think about 2014, we think about the dysfunction of Washington, D.C., the idea that they're actually going to have some type of a deal to avoid the sequester or round two of the sequester seems unlikely. So our internal plan says it's going to happen. We're taking actions, obviously, to address that.
One of the weirdest sagas in military contracting in recent years surrounds the presidential helicopter fleet, Marine One. Where does that stand now?
So there's a new tender out to replace the existing fleet of Sikorsky helicopters that have been serving the president since, I think, the late 1950s. If you could imagine, Sikorsky's been really the only provider of vertical lift for the president since then. There was a tender, if you recall, about 5 years ago. Lockheed and AgustaWestland won that. They got a couple years into it. The cost had soared. They found all sorts of issues. So the government's taking a little bit different tack to the Marine Corps. They're trying to have an off-the-shelf variant helicopter that can meet the mission. And I think, again, Sikorsky's got a great product. We think we're probably the only company that's actually going to bid. And we've teamed up with Lockheed this time. So I think it looks pretty good, but the question comes down to funding still. Will there be funding for this next generation of helicopters?
Do we have to imagine that either through the sequester or through some kind of deal, there's going to be significant cuts or reductions in military spending just because of the stance of the United States and the world and getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth?
We've seen already this past year, a huge step down in military spending outside of the sequester. You think about overseas contingency operations, there was $70 billion, I think, last year. That's been cut in half. The fact is, defense spending is going to be coming down for a long time, even without the sequester. Just to get anything about defense pressures on the overall budget, everything else, other priorities out there. So I think, again, defense is a cyclical business, right? We're probably in a 10-year secular decline in defense spending. And what that means is that the defense companies have to get lean. Sikorsky has been in the process of reducing its workforce. The fact is we've built up all this infrastructure, all this overhead to fight these two wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the wars are over. So that means there has to be cutbacks, there has to probably be consolidations. The question is, will the DoD really allow additional consolidations of the defense primes in this shrinking defense budget? And that'll be a question that it's not going to probably be answered until somebody tries to do something big. The sequester just, again, it's a blunt instrument, right? It's 10% across the board. The only thing it doesn't touch is personnel, which is half the budget. So all of a sudden 10% becomes 20% if you think about the issues facing the leadership in DoD. So it's going to be a tough slog here for the next couple of years on the defense side.